Ed, um, really quickly, this isn't a joke. This is a true story. But my habit every morning when I'm dropping the kids off at school is just to pray as I'm driving through the bus and praying for all the schools and praying around and using businesses and workplaces and homes as Father, let your kingdom come. I was talking to a friend this week, and he was telling me about a young girl that came to their church, had never been to church before, but it grew up. I grew up, I suppose, at school praying the Lord's Prayer, but that's the only reference point she had. And so she came to my friend's church and was shocked to discover that God's name wasn't Harold. She was so convinced that our Father who art in heaven, Harold is your name. So every morning now that I'm praying the Lord's Prayer, I smile to myself every time because I just think of this girl who's grown up her whole life thinking that Harold was the name of God. So I defy you now to not reflect on that whenever you go to pray the Lord's Prayer every morning. As the guys beautifully led us, lighting the second candle, the candle of peace, and that's what we want to reflect on this morning. I'm going to pause the parables for a couple of weeks, and so this morning I want to talk about the peace, about the Prince of Peace. Moved by the verses that Ethan read for us last week. Just to remind you of them, as Ethan lit the first candle for us, read Isaiah 9, verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government will be on his shoulders. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And here is Isaiah prophesying, longing, believing for, hope-filled for one that was going to come in 800 years. And he almost describes the mystery of the incarnation in these verses, where a baby was going to come, and this baby was going to be mighty God. This baby was going to be everlasting Father. This baby was going to be Prince of Peace. And I love it, just if I can, just really quickly go to verse 5, because I kept being drawn back to verse 5, and I almost found myself almost prophesying and longing for Isaiah's words 800 years before Jesus came to be true even today, because he said that every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. And there's just a part of me as I read that verse just longing for war to stop, for it to all just be rolled up, for all warriors' boots to be put away, and so that I love what Isaiah is prophesying and longing for, stern faith for, as he prophesies that this one that was going to come, this Messiah, this longed for one was going to come, this Prince of Peace. And I think we've reflected on this before, and the idea of peace, the Hebrew word is shalom, and it is so much more robust than just the absence of conflict. So I think for some of us, we'll think of peace, our automatic definition, I think, would be something along the lines of the ceasing of war, the absence of conflict. And it's not that it's not that, but it's so much more than that. So whenever the scriptures speak about peace, it's this idea of shalom. It is not just the absence of conflict. And it is almost hard for us to define it. It's hard for me to define it anyway. But it's this wholeness. It's this idea of harmony, of integrity, of completeness. And so that's what has drawn me in to want to communicate something about peace. And I feel like I almost needed it for my soul this week. Because even what we're saying, you're just so conscious of, and if you're part of what we've been praying for every Wednesday and every Sunday, we're just continuing to pray for people. And it's really hard to pray for people seriously and for them not to get into your heart, for them not to move you. As you're praying for people who are in a place of grief, praying for people who are in a place of sickness. It's really hard when you continue to pray for them that something doesn't happen to you, and just thinking of the bigger picture, what's going on across our world. It's hard not to be impacted by that. It's hard not to be moved and long for How long, O Lord? Sometimes you identify with the psalmist. How long, O Lord? You come to seasons like this season where you're reminded he is the Prince of Peace. And I believe that. But you're almost like, where is evidence of it? Where are the signs of it? I suppose for me, I just needed to get because I don't always go there, but I almost needed to find myself getting to the place where actually at the end of all things, it's all going to be made right. It's all going to find itself once again in harmony. It's all going to be made whole. It's all going to be made complete. And so I just found myself really grateful for what the Apostle Paul encouraged the church with. Because the times that the church was growing and thriving in were still turbulent times. Where the oppression of Rome, where the oppression of and the enemy was really significant, and the church was growing in the midst of that. But Paul's words to the church were to encourage them, to remind them. So this is what he says in Ephesians 1, that God has now revealed to us his mysterious will regarding Christ. So this everlasting Father, this Prince of Peace, this wonderful Counselor, this is what was revealed. It's to fulfill his own good plan. And this is the plan, that at the right time he will bring everything together under the authority of Jesus in heaven and on earth. And so as we consider this idea of peace, I want to offer these words these words of hope for us today. That even in the midst of sometimes the gloom and the despair, that actually Jesus, it is all going to be fulfilled, that he will bring everything together under his authority. All things will be brought together. He will harmonize everything. Colossians 1 verse 19 to 20, similar thought for me, similar level of encouragement and hope. God was pleased to have all of his fullness dwell in Jesus, and through him to reconcile to himself all things. Reconcile to himself all things. Bring everything together. Bring a wholeness and completeness in him. So whether things on earth or things in heaven, he made peace. Made peace through his blood shed on the cross. He made peace through this self-sacrificial love that we've talked about so much as we engage with the life of Jesus. He's working all things together. By his sacrificial love, he works in us to bring this about. So it makes even this idea of this kingdom come prayer really significant, because that is what he has decided to do in his wisdom, that he has decided that he will partner with us, with sons and daughters, to bring about his kingdom, to bring about his reconciliation, to begin to see glimpses of all things being brought together, all things being made right, all things being brought to wholeness and completeness, to Shalom. And you'll know those verses, I think, in Romans chapter 8. Mind cannot help but go there, like in all things. He's working all things for our good. And when we sang that song last week, and still the refrain of that going in my mind as I'm preparing for this morning, as I'm thinking about what I would want to communicate, and still there's this idea of I suppose what I wanted you to take away last week. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. And there's something about being reminded of that he is doing something. He is working all things together for our good. And it begins to do something in me, and I hope that it does something in you. That even when you don't see it, even we've sang it, in the chaos, in the confusion, you're sovereign still. In the chaos and the confusion, you're working all things together for our good. In the chaos and confusion, that in you, Jesus, in you, you're bringing all things together. All things are being brought together in you. Making peace through this self-sacrificial love that he modeled for us. And then, even in that beautiful chapter, Romans 8, what a stunning chapter it is, because even there, Paul is reminding us that the present suffering, that the suffering of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory that is going to be revealed to us. Shalom is coming. We see glimpses of it now, but shalom is coming. And there is something about, even though it's dark, and I know that that is real, that what you're feeling, what people are going through right now, it is real. But it was the encouragement from the Apostle Paul that even what you're facing right now, the pain of what you're facing right now, it's nothing in comparison to what glory is going to be revealed, to the peace and the joy that will be revealed when he brings all things together, when he unites everything in this shalom. He will be at the end the Prince of Peace for sure. Everything will be shalom. Everything will be made right. So when he came, and that's what we're reflecting on, and as we lit the candle here, he's come as the Prince of Peace in his first coming, and he will come again to bring all things together, to make all things right. And so if we think that there is chaos now, it was no different to the chaos and the confusion at the time of Jesus. I think the assumption would be that what peace would look like would be an enforced peace. That when the Messiah would come, that they would experience peace because he would get Rome off their back. And it was not an enforced peace. But what it was the Prince of Peace diving right in, embedding himself right in the midst of our chaos and our confusion. Because if we were to think about Mary, and I've been thinking a lot about Mary over the last couple of weeks, but Mary's life did not, I don't think, look incredibly peaceful. And I can't speak as a mother, but I imagine if I was to ask some of the mothers, she would say that traveling on a donkey near full term would not have been a peaceful experience. I imagine that arriving to a city that was full, was heaving because of the census, was not peaceful. I imagine it would have been quite chaotic. And even the very horror of the response of King Herod, taking the lives of all young boys 2 and under. What chaos? What horror? What does it look like then to be Prince of Peace if this looks so chaotic? But he doesn't bring peace by force. He enters fully. He enters fully into the chaos of the world. And there's a part of me hopes that is in some way brings a level of peace to your soul today. Because he's not going to come and take it away, but he is going to fully be present with you in it. And so Matthew, the Gospel Matthew's declaration that he is Emmanuel, God with us. That is just my simple prayer for all of you and for your families and for this community, that would be the real lived experience of people. He's not going to give peace by force. It's not going to magically take things away, but he's going to enter fully into the chaos and the confusion with you. And I think that's how, as we watch his life, that is how he brings peace. He brings peace through sacrificial love. He brings peace as he redeems and restores from the inside. And so however dark and gloomy, and we see it right throughout Scripture, we see it right throughout history, even today, however dark and gloomy, the Prince of Peace is with us. He is with us. And we've already reflected on these couple of verses. And these are in some ways the closing thoughts from the lips of Jesus, and this incredible, you've heard me say it before, John 14, 15, 16, and 17 are the closing words. What does Jesus want to say? Before he is taken to the cross, what are the final words that he wants to communicate? And so for me, John 14 to 17 always carry that wee bit of extra weight. And here he tells us a lot about peace. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not give the peace that the world gives. Don't let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. He knew what was going to come. He knew the level of confusion and chaos that was going to capture the disciples' hearts and minds, and his prayer for them. He knows the same for us. He knows the things that are going to capture our hearts and attention. And he says, my peace I give to you. The peace that the world gives is so dependent on circumstance. The world, um, the world can't give this type of peace that we're longing for and believing that is accessible to us. The world can't give it, and the world can't take it away. The world's peace depends on circumstance, and as I've been sort of reflecting, as I've trying to look inward, and not in a self-condemning type of way, but I just reflect as I think about maybe what's going on within our community and what's going on within our world. If my level of despair, my level of gloom matches the same level of despair and gloom that the world is experiencing and living through, then what do I have to offer? And it's not denying that, like, the things that you're feeling are real, but if I cannot discover the Prince of Peace, if I cannot discover some level of hope about that he is working all things together, what do I have to offer a world lacking in peace, a world drowning in confusion and chaos? And I'm struck by that this week. Hopefully I'm struck by it more than just this week. It's, I guess, the constant challenge. And I listened to this song. I'd encourage you to listen to it, maybe stick it up. It's a song Nicole Nordman wrote a couple of years ago. It's called Maybe. But this line, and it just, again, caught my attention. If the world wants peace for Christmas, could it not begin with us? Is what she asks in the midst of this incredibly thought-provoking song. He's given us his peace. That's what he's told us. John 15 and John 16:32, something similar. I've told you these things so that you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And it's never a fun thing to preach, it's never a fun thing to say, but it's a guarantee. Take it to the bank that you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trial, but take heart, he is overcome. And he has given us his peace. And I just keep coming back to that idea, keep coming back to this. He has given us his peace. If that's the case, I guess I've been asking myself, and there's, again, as I've hopefully communicated often enough, there's not an exhaustive list. There are 2 or 3 things that I've been thinking about, and I think the gift of one another is that then we add to this. How do we access the peace? If we believe that he has given us his peace, how do we access it? And so, not knowing where Neville was going today, not knowing what William was reflecting on, the first thing that I wrote was sing. How do we access his peace? There's something that happens when we sing. And I'd encourage you to stick it into Google when you go home, the Christmas Truce of 1914. And some of you might be familiar with it. But I just found myself like just reading through all these quotes, all these reflections from British soldiers and from German soldiers as they reflected on what took place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in 1914. When somebody out of nowhere, out of the midst of the dark and the gloom and the confusion and all that was taking place in the trenches, a song came out from the trenches, "O come all you faithful." I don't know which side started it necessarily, it depends where you read. But that's what came out from the trenches. And as one side began to sing, "O come all you faithful," the other side in their language began to sing it as well. And something happened, like literal peace took place as they began to sing. They began to sing, "O come all you faithful." And so the next morning when they awoke, they in this one particular area, it didn't seem to happen anywhere else, interestingly. Anyway, but the one group raised their head above the parapet and made their way and embraced each other in no man's land and exchanged gifts and souvenirs, memorabilia. I just found that just a beautiful story about what took place whenever they began to sing. Something happens when we sing. And so I would encourage you to do that. And I would love it that Judith will not mind, but I'd love it that we would just sing that song at the end one more time together. Now that we've heard it once, maybe we could give a go at singing it together. Something that would happen, that peace, his peace, would settle in us. And even the song that we've sang, like peace. Like he is our shepherd. He leads us to peaceful waters. But it doesn't mean that we're not in the presence of our enemy. It doesn't mean that we're not in the presence of darkness. It doesn't strip us out of that. He doesn't pull us out of that. He doesn't enforce a peace on that. But he promises to be with us in it and journey with us through it. And so that's sing. I think we access his peace by singing. I think we access his peace, and reflected in this before, breathe. Something happens, I think, when we pause, when we wait. We've really appreciated, not just because it means Katie will be silent for a minute, but the Advent candle has been really, really nice. To pause, to breathe. There's an access to a peace, I think, when we do that. And then I've just been moved by this idea. Again, I know there's loads of other things. But maybe for some of us in the room, maybe it is for some of us in the room, we're lacking in an internal peace because we need to offer forgiveness, or we need to ask for forgiveness. Maybe just a relational conflict that I think causes us to lack a peace. And I know that there's more to a story than me just simply saying, go and forgive or offer forgiveness or ask for forgiveness. But I would encourage you, if that is you and you're wrestling with that, I think that there is clutter that you need to get out of the way. To use Lila's thought this morning, some stuff that we need to get out of the way in order to access the peace that he has given us, that is ours. He has given it to us. And then finally, pray. Philippians 4, verse 6 and 7, verses that have been on our mind and our hearts over the last number of weeks. But do not let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Emmanuel, God is with you. He is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything pray. And so simply, and maybe obviously, pray. How do we access his peace? Pray. In everything pray. With thanksgiving, present everything to God, and his peace, the peace which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And even just reflecting in this song again, there is definitely something about a supernatural type of peace when you can experience it in the midst of confusion, in the midst of a table in the presence of your enemies. There's something that transcends all understanding. And is it available to us? My longing is that we would access it. And so there's a couple of things I think that would help us get there. And I know that there's other things in the room that you could offer to help us also get there. So communicate them, share them with a neighbour, with a friend, and let us access this peace that is available to us. The Prince of Peace is here. He's making all things right. He's going to make all things new, restoring everything to himself.